Hi everyone, my name is Bartek Nizio. I am a senior programmer in Orbital Knight, and recently I've been assigned with a task to become a product owner of our recent project, Castle Crumble. And here's my colleague.
Hi, my name is Konrad Chrustowski. I'm a game designer in Orbital Knight. I work in Orbital Knight for the past 3.5 years. I work in our first Apple Arcade game, Spireblast, and like a year ago, I was assigned to be a designer in Castle Crumble.
Oh yeah, too much. Okay. So once again, today we'll be talking about our latest game, Castle Crumble. It came out earlier this year in January, and it was a great success for our company. So we would like to share with you some solutions to a couple of problems we had, and I hope you'll enjoy this presentation. So a quick introduction to our company. We are Orbital Knight, a studio which creates hyper-casual games for mobile market. And recently, we also started to develop games on Apple Arcade platform. First, it was Spireblast, and now it's Castle Crumble. So here's a short preview of our game. Okay, so what is Castle Crumble? It's a casual, physics-based game about destroying castles. It was made with Unity ECS, which is called DOTS, and it's a new data-oriented technology that is still in preview. And it is a game that was distributed on iPhones, Macs, and tvOS. And it was a top-selling game, one of the most top-selling games this year, with a couple of top places in many countries. How did we came up with this game? After Spireblast, we wanted to create a new strong title for Apple Arcade, and we didn't want to look for something new because we have to come up with a good idea very fast. So we decided to use a proven concept with a high retention rate. And since previously we developed Castle Wreck, a game with very high retention, it was a little bit outdated at the time and it required a polish. So we thought it deserved a second chance to create a game, and it was a perfect candidate for a prototype. Here you can see on the slides, on the left is Castle Wreck. It's our original game, and on the right is Castle Crumble. And we wanted to find new gameplay for this game. So one of the first changes was adding the pivoting camera. Adding this feature allowed much more freedom to players. They could now find themselves a perfect strategy to shot at the perfect place and the castle, also find hidden objects. So it was a good change. We also changed the input, since the previous one was very dexterity based, and we wanted to create more of a puzzle-like gameplay, which would be more casual. So changing the aim to direct was a good choice. But after those changes, we still struggled with like a 30% retention rate, 30 something, and it wasn't enough to create a solid gameplay. So what finally did it for us was adding the possibility to change weapons. We added weapon cards. Those weapons, players now could freely switch between them and create like chain reaction and combos that would add even more depth to the game. So after finding the gameplay, we had a problem with how to make it work on a device, since Castle Wreck was already struggling with performance on some levels, and it is a mobile platform, so challenges with performance are very crucial, and simulating thousands of objects is very hard. So we look for different solutions, and especially because we had to create games that would work on low-end devices like iPhone 6s, which was kind of a hard topic. So we talk about ECS, could it work? It was in preview, 0.17, so it was a gamble if it would be possible to create a game for Apple Arcade with such unfinished technology. So, but we made a comparison test between classical Unity physics and dots, and the results were amazing because we like activated 10,000 objects in a scene and just see if how would the performance go. And on classic Unity physics, it would have like 5 FPS. It was like slow frame after frame. It was terrible, and we were scared what we will do. But the ECS was like very smooth. Everything collapsed in one nice video. So when we saw the result, we showed to Apple immediately and was very excited to use this technology. Also, because we gained performance, we could add joints to our structures. Previously, Castle Rec didn't use joints. It was only objects stuck on each other. And with joints, we could create much complex structures that were robust and also fun to destroy. We had also, after using ECS and finding the gameplay, we had a couple corner cases with physics. An actual corner case was a tower corner because we expected that if you hit the corner, the tower would collapse. We thought like it's naturally the best strategy to destroy a building, but in reality, it is actually the hardest part of the building because how the force dissipates when you hit it from this angle. And also, we wanted towers to collapse on each other because it would be such an amazing strategy for players to use collapsing in the gameplay. But all those things didn't work by default in physics. So in those cases, we have to program completely custom solutions to achieve desired effect. And so we lose realism for a nice gameplay. Unfortunately, the technology of ECS was still in development, and it was really exciting working on this technology. It was brilliant. It was very interesting, but there was a problem with this architecture because it was a big change for everybody in the company. So nobody knew what they were doing. Also, the documentation was very limited. And so we have to come up with new solutions all the time during development, since also we didn't have much time to look ahead and prove every solution. Some things that were familiar with us didn't work at all, like animations or physics in editor. Those things that didn't work at all at TCS. So we have to create hybrid solutions and use a little bit of previous technology and link it with the new one. But we tested what we could, and since everything worked, the game was building on all platforms, we decided to give it a shot because we thought like without TCS there would be no game. So let's go to the design topic.
Hi again, my name is Konrad, as I said before, and luckily for me, I wasn't around where these problems occurred because I was working on Spire Blast at the moment. There's this huge game about destroying singular towers. So when I heard that they were making the prototype for Castle Crumble about destroying the whole castles, I was really thrilled because that was a real big step from destroying single tower to destroying single castle. So, as I said, luckily for me, I wasn't around in the prototyping phase. The other designers in our company handled that matter. When I came to the project, basically the gameplay was set. There was the aiming system, the collapsing system. There was this, if I recall correctly, there was a couple of weapons. But we had one huge problem. We we were committed to 240 levels for Apple Arcade, and at this moment we had like 3. So and it didn't look so well because at the moment we didn't have tools, we didn't have any pipelines for creating any more levels. We did everything manually. We would go to the specific folder and put specific segments that was like parts of a castle, like fragment of a wall or one floor of a tower. We would put them manually in the editor. We would connect them with each other in a configs, everything made by hand, and it would look something like that. We would have to remember which segments should be connected in which component. They couldn't loop back to each other because the game would crash. If we had like looping castle, like the whole wall surrounding the castle, the 2 last segments shouldn't be connected because we had the closed loop and the game would crash. And so on and so on. Also, we had really big problems with just placing the segments on each other, because if there was they were too far apart, they will collapse on each other, and the castle will collapse by itself. And it will, if they will be too close to each other, we had conflicts with collisions, like you see on that red axis. That's all the places that the separate segments are colliding with each other. And at the first glance, we thought, okay, this looks great. And then we would search for collisions, and the whole castle will light red. So that was a really big problem. And the whole pipeline for creating even a singular level was so hard and so complicated that at this moment I didn't really think that we would made the 240 levels, especially with the introduction of what we call stages. That was the levels with multiple castles in it. So from 240 castles, we would now we would have to make like 500 or 600 castles. It was the double the work. So at this moment, our pipeline could be described like this. This is our documentation for creating single level. As you can see, there's multiple places where we could mess up, and we messed up really bad. So after like a week or so, when I fully understood how the levels were created, I came to our programming team, and I said, I don't want to do it that way because it's painful. It's hard to watch even, and we came up with a tool. We came up with an idea for a tool at this moment, and one of our programmer said, "Okay, give me like 2 weeks to 1 month, and I maybe will give you a prototype." At this moment, when we didn't have any mechanics, any UIs, saga maps, and so on, that was a huge commitment for us to just take one programmer out of the commission for a month. But luckily for us, we were so early in the development that we thought, okay, let's give it a shot. If it doesn't work, we will be far behind. But if it works, we will be far ahead. So that was a gamble. We took it, and after like 3.5 weeks, I don't remember correctly, our programmer came to us and said, okay, with a lot of math and programming magic, I came up with this. Impressive. So, yeah. So this still is our castle editor. That would combine all of that document that you saw earlier into one place. We wouldn't have to worry about anything, any connections between segments, how would they stack on each other. Everything was here. We didn't have to worry about anything. As you can see, we would have like selection of a biome that we are working on, so we wouldn't have like to worry about specific folders even, because it was all automated. We would have a battle that was at castle stage. As I said, we have multiple castle stages on some levels, so we wouldn't have to worry about that either connections between stages, how would they react, how the components would be put together. So we would we could at this moment create any castle stage with the click of a button. It was like quarter of a second, and before it was like a few minutes. So it was a huge improvement. Also, when we have a segment, we have a stage, excuse me, we could add any building to it. Like we could add 10 buildings at the click of a button, and it was so easy. It was all working together perfectly. But when we created that building, it was obviously empty at this moment. It was implemented way earlier, later that we could like save some presets of a building. But at this moment when we started, that wasn't a thing. So we weren't able to create buildings like from thin air. We would have to create it from the editor, step by step. But it was pretty easy because when we click the edit building button, there's something like that would come out, like create a root segment. Okay, what does it mean? The root segment was that fundament of a certain building that would connect and branch out to any other segments. And if we messed up the connection between the root segments and any other segments, the game would crash. Now it was all automated. We didn't have to worry about anything. And we had a pretty neat idea on how to select this segments. We had something like that. We had a full preview about what segments would look like. As you can see, what biome are we in? If we want it to be a wall or a tower, what size of a tower would it be? If we would have windows or not. We could just check a few checkboxes, and we would have one singular or few segments to choose from, not the whole library of segments. And as I said before, the process of creating one stage, one castle, earlier took like few hours to a day with bugs fixing, checking if every connection was right, and so on and so on. And with the editor, it looked like this. And bam, we have a castle. And it would work perfectly. Everything was connected right. There was no collisions, no place to mess up. It was just such a huge improvement that we calculated it was like improvement of an 85% of our work was automated. So it was a pretty huge commitment for us because, as I said before, our programmer was out of commission for pretty long time. But it saved us time in the long run. It's saving us time right now because we are currently working on an updates, and it's still saving us time. So we had a way to create buildings, create castles, but we didn't really have at this moment any idea what castles would it be, what was the mechanics, how many would it be, how many ammo or what ammo even would be in the game or in the singular level. So we came up with an idea that I stole from that I stole from Spire Blast. About a pretty neat way to document each level. And it would look like something like that. It was a simple spreadsheet that would tell which, in the idea of the level, which level we would be working on. We put scene names like here are full scene names, but at the prototyping stage of a new biome, the level scenes were like level 050 dot nothing. So if a level designer were coming and taking the level, they would sign their initial in the level, so the other designers wouldn't have to worry. Okay, this level is taken. We didn't doubled our work, so it was pretty obvious, but we had some issues that we were doubling our work before that. And we would have like length of a level, how many stages it would be, how difficult it would be each stage, because we had like differences between. We were thinking about, okay, this level will be hard, but which stage will be hard? Okay, so we branched this out, and we could manipulate each difficulty by per stage. Also, as you can see on the second screen, we would like put specific mechanics in it, specific ammo type used, and it would be on paper. Everything was on paper. We didn't have to create any levels before we could go to our team and said, okay, here's our biome. It would be looking like this, and everyone could just come in, comment, said that, okay, but what if? How did you came up with the idea that some mechanics were used in that level, and why there? So we are using Notion. So there are this feature called filtering and grouping. That we could just filter how many times would this specific mechanics used in that specific biome, and we would have an output of 19. Okay, so 19 times would this mechanic use, and we would compare it to the other mechanics. Like, okay, the second mechanic was used 40 times, and we could see the huge discrepancy between this. So even on the stage of prototyping the biome, without even touching the editor, you could tell that some mechanics was used less, some mechanics were used more. We could like set the whole mood for our biomes. For example, we would like this biome to be kinda easy, but not so much. So we would throw the helping mechanics a little bit more. And the other biome would be a little harder on the side that, well, we wanted the player to have this feeling that the castles are harder, are more difficult to collapse. So we would throw more difficult mechanics, the mechanics that was hindering the players, and that was all done before we even looked at the editor. So it was a neat idea. Thank you, Arthur, for showing me that. and I think I will be using this format even for my future games, if I made any, luckily. Because it was great way to communicate with other designers. I didn't have to show them specific levels because we had like 60 levels per biome, so we didn't have to talk about each level individually. I would just say, okay, I made a progression, here it is, make a comment. Then we had a like whole meeting with the designers. The designers would throw out the ideas like, okay, this level is too easy, this mechanic is used so often, and we would change it on the spot. And if everything was tuned in, then we would show this to our whole team. And yeah, that was the point where we thought, okay, this documentation isn't really for us; it's for the whole team. And the whole team should use it. But how to use it if there are limited columns? So we added a few more columns for our graphic designers that would tell them if the level that we are creating was in progress and they shouldn't touch it because they could overwrite our work, or it was in balance so they could kinda touch it, but some places could change, or if it was done, so they would go in and do their stuff, like putting every pretty tree and the segments, not segments, and all the enviro there without worrying that we would overwrite our work. And that was we added like an artist column, so they wouldn't double their work as well. And then we would add even the tested column for our QA, so they would come in and we didn't have to set to them, okay, we changed the balance and on which level goes in the progression. So there was a minimum communication, minimal ways for errors even, I would say, because in a communication, as you probably know, if I tell you something today, tomorrow you totally forgot what I was talking about. But in the documentation, if I checked this checkbox that it was not tested, today it would be still not tested if you didn't test it. So it was a great way for us to improve our means of communication and to be sure that everything was smooth. But still, even with all of the preparation, with tools, with documentations, we still messed up. And sometimes, even with the greatest preparations, we are still humans. We will suffer from the lack of time, the stress, the deadlines. There's something in our personal lives, and we had. I wouldn't say that we had many issues, but we had few that stayed with me for a long time, and I want to present to you 3 of them. The first one was the mechanic that is already in the game. It's playable. We shipped it. It's working great. But at this moment, this flashing color was called roots or vines. Our idea was that these huge vines would entangle the tower, making it harder to collapse. And we presented the idea to our team. Our team said, "Okay, sounds good. Implement it." Okay. And we thought, well, maybe this whole root system could grow even more. So if you ignore it for a long time, it would make the tower even harder to collapse. So we implemented this. And like after a month, we had like 40 levels with this mechanic. Our graphic designer came in and said, "Okay, we would make graphic for it." Okay, cool, but it will be hard. How hard? Impossible, because we already had like Bartek mentioned before, we had some problems with the physics. It was mostly done, but we are still making the game for like iPhone 6, and the performance there was terrible. So any means to even thinking about making the performance even worse was out of commission. So our graphic designers came in and said, "Okay, if we spawn like roots around the tower, it would be a multiple meshes and it would hinder our performance." Okay, so came up with something else. Okay, what's about the flashing color, as you can see? Okay, but then how do we tell the player that the flashing color after a moment this whole segment that is flashing would color the color blue, the hole in it will stop flashing, so the player would know that this segment is already hardened. So how could we tell the player that the already blue segment would be flashing again blue? That wouldn't make sense. What about other colors? Okay, it doesn't match our palette. Okay. The talks was long, and we even thought about, okay, what about changing the mechanic at all? And we said, like, dude, we had 40 levels with this. That's a huge commitment. So we cut the content, and we scrapped the whole idea of progression in the hardening of a segment, and we stopped with an idea that the segment would be like easy to collapse and hard to collapse, and that was all. Of course, we had to came back to our previous levels and change and tune it, but it was like that was the minimal evil that we took. And that stood up for me because at the moment I didn't think that the whole FPS drop thing was a real big thing, because Bartek, as Bartek just said, we fixed it. So what's the problem? As I came to realize, there was multiple problems that were connecting each other on different levels. So So at this moment we took that pretty serious about the performance and the future mechanics. We designed with this in mind that okay, it should be fun, it should be pretty easy to implement, and it should be pretty easy to show to our player, because this whole flashy multiple meshes solutions wasn't working for us. The other problems that we encounter was another mechanic. Sorry about the whole mechanics things. I'm a designer. That's what I do. Was the bubble mechanics. That was the mechanic that we thought was great for hindering our player, because you could rotate our camera in a specific way around the castle. So we thought, okay, what if we put like some kind of bubble, some force field, something like that was flowing around the castle, so the player couldn't shoot from the specific angle. And we thought, okay, yeah, that's a great idea. We implemented it, we put it in the level, and someone, I don't know if that was our boss or someone like that, came in and he was looking at the screen, looking at this mechanic, and he just swiped right like 5 centimeters, and he was like, well, that mechanic isn't working anymore. And he was right. So we added multiple bubbles on the level, and we thought, it didn't even look like a level anymore, because we had like, our attention is more focused on the bubbles than the castles that the player should destroy. So we came with another idea, and the process would go like for like 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and after 3 weeks we were so tired about this mechanic that we thought, okay, that's a sunken cost fallacy, and we didn't want this mechanic to be in game anymore. So we came up with an idea, brilliant idea, to scrap the whole thing together. It's not in the game, and it probably never would be. And we came up with an idea for another mechanic, and we shipped it and we implemented, and it was all doing great. But the main point is that we spent too much time for trying to make this mechanic work, that we really wanted it to work, even if we had a huge sign that it wasn't working. The whole idea stuck with us for like a month, because we came up with another idea similar to that. Like that was this portal systems, that we would shoot the portal, and our bullet would be shoot out from the another part of the portal. Okay, cool idea. We could like focus our players in the specific places, and we would allow them to do cool trick shots with cool weapons, and wow, we would make this awesome feeling about how the castle would collapse. And again, someone came up and said, well, why should I use this portal if I could just shoot the place directly? Yeah, and that was the whole point. So we scrapped this idea at all. We scrapped it and came up with another idea. And the story goes on and on and on, and hopefully we learn our lessons and wouldn't implement anything like that anymore. I doubt it. And with all of that, all that tools, all that documentations, all that problems, all our history, all our adventures with the game, we came with pretty great results. We were like top in the world. I don't know, even top 1 at some point. In some countries, we were even top 1 in some countries, so pretty great success. But at the very moment when we were starting to create this game, we would had like this question: what's this game about? Is it like a puzzle game, so the player should do a chain reactions in the specific way in order to collapse the tower, or was it a simulation? So it was like pretty realistic, and the whole point of messing with the physics wasn't a thing at the moment. And or was it a casual game, like you just came in, ride a train, and shoot some castles? Everyone in our team had a different view on the game, so we asked the one person that was mothering at the moment, our players. We made some playtest clouds, we watched the videos, and we came with surprising results, because our players would comment on our game like, okay, if I put that weapon, that TNT in this place and shoot the grenade in the other, the tower would collapse on this side. And they were like coming up with awesome ideas that we would never thought of, and they would proceed with selecting the basic weapon and just shooting the castles exactly like we did, so mindlessly. And we came with this huge discrepancy between what the players told us to do and what the players actually did. So we thought, well, we will make a game that is casual in a core, but we will allow players to make this cool trick shot, but that wasn't really our focus. Because even if the player was talking to us, hey, allow me this to focus my things on the puzzle side of the game, they still would prefer to do it casually. So we kinda did both ways, but with more focus on the casual, and for casual players. We did some soft launches that like made us sure that was a right direction, because the analytics came in and the retention was great, CPIs was great, level funnels was through the roof. Like the players even had like 80 or 85% win rate, and they would still play the game. And we thought, well, 85% of win rate is pretty huge. Maybe the game is too easy. So we did an A/B test, and we bumped up the difficulty a little bit, and it was terrible. it was just awful. So we scrapped the whole idea of making it more difficult, and came up with this sureness about the casuality of our game. And I will get back to Bartek.
Thank you, Konrad. Just last topic. This project was really hard. We missed our deadlines a lot. We missed all of our deadlines, actually, because it was the first time when we worked with like more than 15 people at the project. It was a complex physics game. And dots, actually the problem was kind of like dots surprised us every time, because every time we had a deadline, like a major error came out. We couldn't build games. We had to change the Xcode version of our project, and it make difficulties. We couldn't get the performance that was required. And so in the end, the dots was a really risky gamble. And as I said before, we wouldn't make a game without it, but it make a lot of stress for our team. Also there was another problem. The problem was that I was a product owner and I was also a developer. I kind of had like a split personality, because on one hand I wanted to create the best game I could as a developer. On the other hand, I had to manage project and schedule it so that we would finish it on time. And those tasks were kind of like their opposites. And we didn't have a producer. So the solution to this problem was hiring Marta, and it was a great solution. I really recommend this approach, because a person who could look at the project and task with a fresh eye and wasn't hindered with problems of development was adding a lot of stability to our project. And the second thing is we have to don't be afraid to cut content, because in the end players wouldn't know if the feature isn't there, but if it would be made, it will be unfinished, or if we had problems with submitting on the delivery date, it would just create more problems. Okay, so this is it. Thank you very much, guys. It's time for some questions.
Okay, if you have any questions, just ask them. Okay.
Thank you for your lecture. Very interesting and very nice game. Can you tell what is what was the size of the team and how long does it take to create a game? And who exactly is, how many programmers, how many artists, 3D modelers, and etc.?
Thank you. I can't talk exact numbers since we have a cooperation with Apple, and it's we are very satisfied. We can't talk about details as much, but the whole team was like 15 people, and it took more than a year to create this game. From the prototype to the end result, it was a year. But now we are still updating the game, and we're still working on it.
Hey, thanks for the talk. I just wanted to ask, how did you approach the testing and the balancing of every levels? Was it only about how many shots on average it should take to destroy a castle, or did you had some hard requirements like you cannot win this level without using a specific weapon? What was like the idea of how do we measure? What's the metrics of the balance?
Well, we had set weapons for each level, so each player would have the same number of weapons and the same like specific weapons. So there was 3 weapons on each level, and the player couldn't change it. The one thing the player could change was the booster that he was taking on the level, so that was like another window of opportunity that he would pay the virtual money that we were giving him, spend some resources, and he would like get a helping hand. And how did we manage the balancing? Well, with a lot of playtesting, of course. And sometimes we had like huge problems because when I was creating my level and it was like labeled as hard, and I would think, well, okay, there will be more harder mechanics, more hindering mechanics. The segments will be harder to made of materials that was harder to collapse. And I made the level. I was pretty happy about it. And then another level designer came in and he rotated the level 180 degrees, shot it once, and it will whole collapse. And yeah, that was really painful to watch because then the whole team came in and said, well, this game is really easy, and that was making it pretty hard. But the whole idea of this 360 view of a castle was pretty challenging because we didn't have like full view about how difficult was this level, because the players would always surprise us and came up with an idea that we didn't think about. There was some like RNG components to it, like it was all physics based. So if something would shoot from the collapsing castle and hit another castle, and this castle will collapse, and the chain reaction will go throughout the whole level. Well, we didn't plan it. We didn't like suppress it either. So it was a lucky shot, and sometimes it's happening that even the hardest level could be collapsed with even a single shot if you are lucky. And it was, and this lucky shot mechanics, like I like to call it, is pretty hard to repeat, because I could shoot the same spot 100 times and get that 100 different results. So we made the pretty big case about our playtesting. we would have that idea that if I created like, I don't know, 20 levels and the other designer would create 20 levels, then we would switch and play out the different the levels from the different designers, so we get a different approach. And more than most levels were changed or tweaked in some ways. Like in ammo balance, how many ammo it is, in like whole architectural structures, like how the segments were made, how the levels were made, and it's the whole idea of creating that game that is kinda still changing and still evolving. So it's pretty difficult, but we do everything we can to balance it.
Thanks for the talk. Why did you decide to use dots in this project, and was it beneficial in the end?
It was DOS is what made this game. I mean, without it, there would be no such high quality of castles with so many objects. It's still like wasn't perfect because we had to create solutions to limit the number of rigid bodies on the scene, especially on those lower devices. But ECS, because it gave have a parallel physics, it gave just so much performance. So that was basically it. It was the physics, and
okay. If there are no more questions, I think that we can finish. Thanks a lot to both our speakers.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.